Welcome to episode 136 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And I wish I had a little doll that looked exactly like me so I could put it in Zoom meetings for work.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and I'm your friend to the end.
Well, that's unfortunate. Joining us today, Allison Lovecraft and Ian Lovecraft are back. Welcome back.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Missed you.
Absolutely. It's been a little while. Yeah, why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself?
I am Ian Lovecraft, and I will let my wife, Allison Lovecraft, give her intro.
So we are Ian and Allison Lovecraft. We're the Lovecrafts TM. I'm going to trademark that soon. We run a horror group here in Las Vegas, as along with a lot of different other stuff. Savage Membrane Productions. We are both into the occult as well as all things horror. So that's us.
Awesome. So, I gotta say, when we were throwing around ideas for films to talk about today, I was like, Don has been begging to do Child's Play. And so when it came up, I was like, yeah, we got to do it. He'll be so happy. So I just wanted to say thank you for making Don's night here.
Yes, this is going to be a very dark episode. I'm going to reveal some secrets on this one.
I'm excited. I think it's going to be nice. I think from what I hear, you might have some really good insight on some of the voodoo aspects.
No.
No?
I mean, other than it's movie voodoo, it's not real voodoo.
Is.
You know, it's it's that stereotypical, like, oh my God, you cannot mess with the dark arts. I'm like, come on, dude. Seriously?
It's kind of like when you have to talk about pretty much any movie with witchcraft. You're like, that's not quite how that works.
So yeah, Don, let's start there. Like the voodoo in this is so bad that I knew it was wrong. So I got to know, like, when you see something like this, like, are you immediately mad or is it funny? Like, what level hits you with this kind of stuff?
Oh, it's hilarious to me. And full disclosure, I'm not a voodoo practitioner. I have people in my family history who've dealt with that stuff. But even as it was explained to me, it's like, the movies are complete bullshit when they handle this. It's always, here's what it really comes down to. It's something that's foreign. It's scary. We have to make this look as though it's some weird beliefs that someone has. But if you flipped it, there's a great article called The Body Ritual of the Nasarima. You know, it was basically a hoax article or a satirical article, kind of like Jonathan Swift's article about eating children to basically, please landlords. And in the article, he has you completely delve deep into ethnocentrism by acting as though, oh my God, these people I'm reading are so backwards and so primal and so subhuman. And then you realize at the end of the article that he's talking about Americans because all he did was flip the word backwards. So any of the rituals, brushing your teeth or going to the bathroom or having a baby, he describes it in the same way that anthropologists describe what they view as, primitive cultures. But one thing that he really hits on as far as to have a comparison with this, it would be if someone flipped, just Christianity in general, not necessarily a specific denomination. But if I talked about, hey, man, they do cannibalism there. Like they go in, they drink blood and they eat this dude's body parts and all this other, there's the figurative stuff that gets thrown into these. They're the metaphors, when you're talking about that, to where if somebody did a film in the reverse, you could have some fun with Christian traditions. Whereas with this film and other films like it, they kind of play around with the general audience's lack of understanding when it comes to voodoo. Because I'm thinking about like 20 movies now, like even, Live and Let Die. They bring that up so many times where there's just this ridiculous ridiculous practices and things going on. I mean, the real voodoo itself and the real hoodoo and gree and all that stuff, it's so basic. Actually, I'm going to get in trouble if I say that. It's so mundane. Like, it would just be boring if you got, things like, I mean, just like lighting incense so you have the good fragrance or the positive light that's there, or the types of candles that you would burn, or, even things like, smudging, which some cultures do. When you go down to it, it's kind of like, okay, well, there's really nothing crazy, wild, or, too mystical about this to where, I should be afraid of it, as opposed to I should just probably learn about it and understand why it's so important to a culture.
So let me flip this to you guys. I would say out of the four of us, I'm the one who watches the least horror films. I like a lot of accuracy, but I also like absolutely insane shit to explain things off without doing anything.
Okay.
Like, as just viewers, how do the three of you feel about accuracy? Like, do you think that it's at all important? Are you totally fine with this being voodoo? Like, just like, what are your feelings on that? Anybody who wants to go?
I'm going to let the Lovecrafts go, since I just ran my mouth.
I think that, do you want to go?
Nope, you can go ahead.
Okay. I think that when it comes to stuff like that, when it comes to seeing a movie having essentially stealing cultures, beliefs, practices, etc., I would rather them be as far from the truth as possible.
Right.
I don't want them to even have a lick of possibility into truth, because I don't want someone seeing it and going, oh, that must be how it is, and then asking someone about it and then being like, well, I mean, kind of, because then immediately in their head they're like, okay, that was accurate. Like, no, I want to be like, nope, that's 100% not how it is. Let me tell you how we actually do a candle spell. You set it up. So I would rather things like that be completely absurd and nowhere near the real practice.
Okay. Ian?
Kind of going along with like what Dawn was saying is, like, if you are doing a lot of stuff and making it accurate, it's going to be boring, and nobody's going to want to sit there and watch a movie where, how a lot of stuff actually is. So it's like, I understand hyping it up, and especially for when this movie came out, like, everybody wasn't as being authentic and stuff. Like, there's movies, I think, like Ghoulies. We were watching the movie Ghoulies a couple months ago, and they have like a scene in the basement where I think the guy was just trying to summon a demon, and he ends up summoning the Ghoulies. And it's just like, and there's like stuff in that, like, that I recognize from like ceremonial magic. That's pretty cool that like they had somebody on board with some of the actual stuff. But like Dawn was saying, though, is that if everything's gonna be super, super accurate, people are gonna get bored with it, because it's not like, you have to sensationalize things for movies and TV shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, because even some of the stuff that's out there, like, those of you want to Google this, Google it. But even there are certain rules within certain communities about how you behave yourself or how you conduct yourself, or things to be on the lookout for. One of those is, if you're a guy and you're dating a young lady and she serves you red food, don't eat it. Because of what she could possibly be trying to do to you. Now, again, this is one of those things that becomes an old wives' tale based off of some practice. But yeah, I'm going to agree with the Lovecraft. It's one of those things where I want it to be sensationalized to where I can laugh at it and be goofy about it. Where I would have some of my more religious relatives who would watch this, and they would think that's exactly what the shit is like. They're like, oh my God, he's summoning this, and that he's going to possess this person, and this is going to change over. I'm like, don't you guys catch the Holy Ghost like every Sunday? Like, isn't that the same shit where somebody's supposed to be possessing your body? That's different. That's for Jesus. It's not. It's the same thing.
There's also the line that you don't want people to cross, where it is starting to be disrespectful.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah,
and that happens a lot in movies, especially like when you're using like voodoo and stuff like that. It's like, a lot of times in movie, they do get really disrespectful, because they just want to act like, oh, everything's negative, when, there's nothing in this world that probably is 100% negative. And that's like a line they have to watch when they're putting this stuff in movies. It's like, sensationalize it, make it look good for the camera, let it help how some dude's soul is going to get into this doll so he can murder people. Okay, let's jump to voodoo because everybody knows about voodoo dolls. So they somehow can make that, wrap that around so it works for this movie, but then don't just go over the top where you're just being disrespectful to the culture.
Well, and there's also doing it for nefarious good, right? It's not he's possessing the doll or whatever in order to prolong his life because he's been sick or even there's kind of that gray area, I would say half good, half bad, like in a movie like Skeleton Key, where the couple that's doing it was doing it, one, to get out of being attacked to save their own lives from the racialized violence. But then they realized like, oh, well, we can keep doing this and actually, get the years that were stolen from us of the life that we could have eventually had. Still some bad in there, but I mean, you can see what their purpose was. Whereas with Charles Lee Ray, it's that you're tying the voodoo to something bad, and then you're putting it into the hands of an evil character. I mean, he's a murderer. He's a serial killer. So you're already taking something that doesn't have, I guess, a quote unquote high value within society, or at least a high respectability level within society. And then you're having a serial killer doing this. I mean, if it had been a serial killer and serial rapist, like it would have been like over the top of like, we get it, yeah, voodoo is bad because a bad guy used it. And you never actually see it used in a good way in this movie. There are movies like Eve's Bayou, where it gets used in good and bad, but it gets primarily used in good ways. So you actually understand, like we were talking about earlier, you see how boring it is. It's like, oh, your mom has a headache. Here, I'm going to mix this together and have her take it. But this, it seems as though with the sensationalism that gets right up to that border of being comical to an extent, that this movie handles it fine, but it goes back to the whole idea of this is a foreign concept, this is a foreign religion, foreign belief system. Backwards people believe in this, or bad people believe in this. So why not? We're going to have our main villain be the guy who uses it and uses it to do more bad shit.
One thing I did like that when he went to the guy's house, I can't remember his name now, the dude who actually taught him like the voodoo spell and stuff. Like when he goes to like kill him, he's like, you like the guy was very upfront about how, you're misusing everything I taught you. Like right. you're so like, even though, like Charles Lee Ray is using it in a bad light, the guy who taught it to him was like still trying to show that, hey, like this stuff is like, you're not using it the way that it is intended to be used. So I thought that was a plus. And I even know if I remembered that being in there until we rewatched it like a week ago.
Yeah, I definitely didn't. I hadn't seen it in, I don't know, maybe 25 years. So I had no idea going into it that was part of it. And I thought that was really redeeming. It was such a great way to show, hey, this isn't just evil. It's something that can be used that way. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, I didn't expect that in a movie from the 80s.
Well, James, what were you expecting?
The usual. I would just expect, I saw a new movie like a few weeks ago, and I won't mention any names, but let's just say I hated it with a passion. And they really shit on some Native American lore, and there was no redeeming of it. Mm-hmm. And I would have expected that more in the 80s than today. So when you say, what did I expect? I guess I just have weird expectations of what's going on in movie world.
It's weird. I might have seen that same movie.
Huh. That's weird, because now we're doing Child's Play instead. So let's talk more about this little doll guy, Chucky. I've heard of him. No, my real thing is, have any of you watched the new show?
Yes, we are both currently watching the new show.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we've seen like the first 3 episodes. Because I know like the first 2 or 3 on YouTube, and so we watched those, and then
I think we saw the first 2, and we're trying to get to the 3rd still.
Okay, yeah. So we saw the first couple of them at least.
Yeah.
Cool. How are they handling it there? Is it similar, or like have they gotten to that yet? Or I don't know how they're.
They don't address his origin at all.
Really?
Oh, that's cool.
I'm guessing they will at some point, because I think the last episode we saw, you started seeing like backflashes of Charles Lee Ray when he was a child, because they're in Hoboken. I think it's Hoboken, New Jersey. It's like where he's from, or something like that. And so I'm sure they're going to tie it in. I'm sure they will bring up the voodoo thing, but at the point that we haven't brought it up yet.
All right, that's cool. I was just wondering if they were telling it in a similar way or not, but all right, cool.
I know it kind of seems like as the series went on, like it's always mentioned like that he's in the doll because he did this voodoo spell, and they always do the chant. In like every movie, you know, they have to do the chant at some point, at least once, but I don't think they ever really try to delve, you know, or dive back into the whole like real voodoo aspect and try to give it more background. I think like what we get in the first movie, I think is a lot of like what we get from the rest of them. I know, like, what is it in Bride of Chucky? Tiffany has like the Voodoo for Dummies book,
right?
So I think that's about it. It's like besides the chanting, I think this is the most we get is when he goes to see his teacher.
Well, even in the remake, the reboot, not the remake, but the reboot, like they don't even deal with that. It's a computer program that, you know, somebody decided. I made the joke to James before when I was talking about this movie. It's like that episode of The Simpsons and Treehouse of Horror where they have the Krusty doll, and the way they fix it is they realize that it was set on evil instead of on good. And that's pretty much what the reboot is. It's somebody at the factory, you know, was playing around and the code got all screwed up. And I think the building got struck by lightning or something. And so this one doll just happens to be, you know, a little off, as opposed to, you know, possessed by the soul of a serial killer.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at some of the information on this movie, and I guess like in the original script that Don Mancini put in, like it wasn't voodoo at all, and it wasn't a serial killer. That the doll was going to come to life based on like Andy's blood and like people who have wronged him or like is mean to him or something like that, and then like the whole and stuff like that was added after other people came in with rewrites for the script.
So you're saying he'd be more of a hero?
he would be a vigilante taking out the trash.
Oh yeah, I could get behind that. That sounds.
I think that's interesting because in the show, that's kind of how he pretends to be with the new kid. Like he's just taking out his enemies. He's helping him, you know.
Yeah. That is. I didn't think about that till right after. That is true. How Chucky's portraying himself to the new kid in the TV show.
We see a lot of movies with dolls, you know, whether it's Dead Silence or any of the Child's Play movies or Annabelle. What is it about dolls that just fascinates us all so much? Like, I've never been scared of dolls. It's never done it for me, but I have friends that literally like won't go in my aunt's room because she has a creepy doll or things like that. Like, what is it about dolls?
I think that's it. It's just there's some people just get creeped out by dolls, just like how people get creeped out by clowns. It's kind of like the same thing. Like you're saying, like I've never had issues with dolls. Like I'm not scared of dolls, but like sometimes you will see that doll and it's sitting somewhere, and you swear to God, when you looked at it a minute ago, it was looking in another direction, but now all of a sudden it's staring at you, and you just get like that feeling running up your spine. Or if you walk into a room and there's a doll sitting there in the corner and you don't see it when you first come in, you might get that shock of, oh, there's somebody in here. And I don't know if it's because, you know, because a lot of the dolls that they show in these movies that are like really creepy dolls, like they look a lot like people. They're not as cartoony. Like I understand Chucky is a little bit, but like when you look at like the doll that they use for Annabelle in real life, she was like a Raggedy Ann doll, but in the movie they make her look more like one of these porcelain dolls that have more human features. So maybe it's just us being afraid of tiny people. Well,
and yeah, it kind of gets close to that uncanny valley area of it's too close to human that can make people uncomfortable when you get too close, but it's still off. And then just the innate history of dolls, especially like those porcelain ones that were made for a child who died kind of thing and had like parts of that child in it. Like that in and of itself is an origin story of the haunted doll. Like you put a soul into this, you put pieces of a human into this doll. So it just kind of, I can see where it would push too far against the separate the.
What about you, Don? Have you ever been afraid of dolls?
I've never been afraid of dolls. I've been creeped out. It's never been a thing where I've walked into a room.
That's what I mean. I don't mean like terrified.
No, because I'm gonna bring up a point where I did scare the living shit out of someone because with a doll. But no, I find some dolls creepy, and Ian hit on what I wanted to point out, which is it's the human-like qualities that are there with those dolls, to where not that they're done so well that they look alive, but the fact that they have faces, they have eyes that are looking back at you. There's no emotion that's there, to where it's just creepy to see it and feel as though it is watching you, or feel like that it does have a presence. But yeah, I did as a kid. I had those moments where I was in a room and it's like my stuffed animals or whatever, and I would cover my eyes and then kind of peek through my fingers to see if like they'd moved, or they were looking back at me. But it's the whole thing of seeing those seeing those dolls.
Let's jump into the film itself. Lovecrafts, where would you like to, what's the big thing with this film for you guys?
One thing that I noticed when we were watching this movie this time through was how I did not like the mom as much as I remembered. It wasn't that I loved her ever or whatever, but it's like I'm watching her, and it's like Allison even points out, she's like, why would you put clothes in this giant ass box that's the exact shape of a good guy doll, instead of just putting them in a closed size box, instead of like one that's like 3 feet long? And it's like this kid is like like when you're watching it, this kid is super obsessed with the show. Like he's has the cereal, has the PJs, watching it on TV all the time. And then like when he starts crying, or not crying, but when he's complaining about how he wants the good guy doll, she's like, oh, well, I didn't know you wanted one, but I'm going to buy you the accessory for the doll.
Right.
I'm not going to buy you. I didn't know in time to buy you the doll. And another point too, when the babysitter dies at the beginning, and the kid's in the room, and like the mom like loses it on him. She's like yelling at him, Andy, go to your room, go to bed, and all this shit. And Allison's like, this kid just might have seen this woman get murdered. Right? You have these cops house. This detective is like looking at his shoes and like questioning him without his parents being there, or without his mom being there beforehand. But then the mom comes in and is like just going off on this kid about, go to bed, get in your room. It's like, this kid has trauma. Like maybe you should, be a little nice to him, because he potentially just saw either this lady commit suicide, have an accident, or somebody break into your apartment and murder this, his Aunt Maggie is what he calls her. So it's
he pushed her out of the window, and that's also a lot of trauma.
Yeah. Anyway, it's like that's not how you treat this kid. It's like she was like, I didn't remember her being such a crappy mom. It was really this time around.
Look,
I'm
my
so
notes,
glad that it wasn't just me.
In my notes, I wrote down, mom is obviously a cigarettes and coffee for breakfast person.
Yes.
Now, that's nothing against cigarettes and coffee type people. It's just one of those things where I'm like, she just seems like her last fuck is gone. She's kind of like, I'm too busy to deal with any real shit. And even when it comes to the toy, I'm glad you brought that up, Ian, because I didn't see this movie the same way I saw it as an adult, as when I was a kid. So when I saw this, it wasn't too long after the movie came out. So I'm not thinking about all those things of like, oh, you put this stuff in the same size box. But as an adult, and I probably watch this movie maybe once or twice a year, I want the mom to die. As an adult, I'm like, one, okay, I get you're trying your best with your kid, but then I'm like, moms, no matter how busy a mom is, a mom knows her kid's favorite shit, especially if he's going around wearing all the stuff. And obviously she had to buy it for him, so she knows that he likes that stuff. But it made me think about all those parents in the 80s when the Cabbage Patch Cabbage Patch Kids had come out. The My Buddy doll, and then in the 90s you had the Tickle Me Elmo. Like the parents who went out to get those things, and then of course the parents who waited and overpaid for them. All those parents knew what their kids wanted. It didn't matter what income bracket they were in, what type of work they were doing. They knew they had to get that shit because that was like their kid was not going to shut up about it. Their kid was going to tell them like, Mom, I want this. Dad, I want this. And you were going to go looking for it. I mean, I love watching the videos of the people fighting each other over Cabbage Patch dolls.
You would.
It's great. It's great. I use it in my classes. I show people, I'm like, hey, you think Black Friday shopping is crazy now? Watch this guy swing a bat at another guy over a Cabbage Patch doll.
It's funny. I have this in my notes too about the toy or whatever, like it being along the trendsetter of like you have to get your kids this thing, otherwise you're the worst parent. Like this is the one toy, like this is it. And I thought that was really interesting that they went ahead and put that in the movie, so much so that she's buying it in a back alley. Like,
well, and I really thought that this was based off of like My Buddy. And then I was reading about it and they said straight out it was influenced by Cabbage Patch Kids. And I was like, I mean, that makes a shit ton of sense, like. But yeah, I would have totally thought that. But no, I'm glad that you guys brought this all up because in my notes, literally one of the only notes I took, it just says, why did they spend all this time making me sympathize with this woman just to piss all over it the rest of the film? So there you go. Those are the notes I take when watching stuff.
You do get a little sympathy for her because her boss is awful. Like he is like the quintessential of like a horrible boss.
Yes.
And so you're like, okay, I get it. Like she's got all this stress. It's her kid's birthday. She doesn't even get to spend his birthday with him because her boss and work, and she's a single parent. She's trying her best. But then, when I saw that box, I was like, why did she put clothes in a giant box? Like nobody who wraps clothes like that. You put that shit in a bag. Like
a psychopath.
Who does that to a kid? Nonetheless, like no child's gonna look at a giant box and be like, "Oh, I hope it's closed." Like,
and you could see like when he was making his mom breakfast in bed for his birthday.
Yeah,
right?
He's like walking by with the tray. He looks and he sees the box and he knows it's the exact same size because there's a commercial, and you could just see how excited he gets because he knows that he's getting his good guy doll, and then it was like some crappy pants. It was like one pair of pants, maybe two. I was like, really? you use a 3 foot, long box to put like 2 pair of pants in there. And she was like, you really needed these, Andy. You really need these pants. Oh, okay. Thanks.
I don't know why he wore one outfit the whole damn time.
She wanted him to stop wearing that thing. She hated that doll. It's a really good point. He does just wear the same outfit all the time.
We were doing the timeline when we were watching the movie because his birthday had to have been a Sunday because he didn't go to school that day, right?
Okay.
And so we're like, what department store in 88 is going to be open until 10 o'clock at night
on a Sunday?
On a Sunday. I was like, no, that's not happening. I was like, this boss just wanted her there to hang out because he just didn't want her to be with her kid. She probably went on a date with the boss. Is what really happened. They just didn't show us that.
That's an interesting idea. I like that. Although this boss seems like he would have given her the box from one of these dolls to put the pants in just to fuck with the kid even more.
Yeah, here's the box for the display that we already sold. Kids like playing with boxes. The guy wanted to get rid of it. He's in a cash economy, right? And he's a complete creep. Because you see how later on when she's asking him for help, he states what his price is, but then when she doesn't have enough, he says, "Hey, well, let me go ahead and sexually assault you right here in front of all these other people, and that'll be your payment."
What is even worse than that is when the cop comes up and stops that from happening. He just lets the dude go.
Nothing happens.
Allison was like, so you literally just saw this dude about to rape this lady, and you're just going
gonna ignore it?
You're just gonna let him go? Yep, that was 1988 for you.
Okay.
Well, that's what you get from Humperdinck.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a lady that he likes, like what if he didn't know this woman? Then what would he have done?
He's probably one of those guys who's like, well, a crime hasn't been committed yet, so I can't really do anything.
He doesn't seem like the best cop. So.
No, not at all.
No, definitely not. I think that the top most unrealistic took me completely out of the movie. Shouldn't have happened this way. Like the most unrealistic thing is like right towards the beginning when Andy's like making the breakfast and the good guy show starts and he runs in and he goes, "Oh, I've seen this one already," and leaves. Mm-hmm. You show me a kid who won't wash the same damn thing over and over and over again. I don't think so.
Let me tell you about my life. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Yeah, no, I called bullshit on that too. I was like, man, where do I get that kid?
Yeah.
I also, I don't like that it's the same cop as the beginning. Like I get that it's 88 or whatever. It's just such poor storytelling.
He's a homicide detective, right? Like, why is he doing
Chicago.
Other stuff?
Yeah, I feel like
busy?
Well, like, if he was targeted, it would be different to me. Like if Chucky was specifically going after a family that was close to this guy,
right,
I would get it. But as it is, like all just lining up, that kind of bugged. But whatever. It's just me whining.
So you don't have to pay more.
No, here's what it was. It was the 80s. It was budget cuts. This cop didn't have too many options. I think it was probably like one more file complaint, and he was going to have to be out on the street. So instead of taking a desk job, they were like, "All right, Mark, here's what you're going to do. Just check in with us. We're not going to let you work any cases for a while."
I do love that Charles Lee Ray is, named after 3 famous killers. Charles Manson, of course, Lee Harvey Oswald, and James Earl Ray. I think that is so great, just combining them, making Charles Lee Ray. But what I really like about it is that legitimately sounds like the name of a guy I would hear on the news. And I'm like, man, don't ever use any of these names when naming your children, okay? Just don't do it.
Look, I've got it bad enough as it is because I've caught up on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and one of the episodes are like, Donald Jr. ruined it for all the Donald Jr.'s out there. And I'm sitting there watching and like, son of a bitch, he did.
It's true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the telltale sign. If you've got 3 names in your description, in your identification, whatever, you're just destined to do something bad.
I was going to say that I thought that Alex Vincent Barkley, he did really good. There was several times in the movie, like when he's supposed to be scared, and this kid legitimately looks terrified. Like I think it was when he was in the hospital, the mental hospital, wherever they lock him up the one time, and like Chucky's like outside of his window, and he's just there like by his door, balled up, crying because the doctors won't let him out. And he's like, Chucky's coming to kill me. And it's like the kid literally looked like he's terrified. Like I was like, I don't know what they told him to get this kid so scared, but like he this kid, I know he's done some more acting and stuff, one would assume, but he did a really good job in this movie as being very realistic.
I thought he was great. Yeah.
Yeah, we met him a couple years ago at a convention. It was right around the time that the remake was about to come out. And so we talked to him for a couple minutes, but yeah, he's, like I said, he looked legitimately terrified in this movie a lot of the times.
So one of the things I was reading was that when Mancini was originally writing this, he kind of thought about like putting more on, is Andy crazy? Like not letting us see Chucky do it, and just kind of like is it Andy? Is it the doll? And I'm so glad they didn't go that route, because I feel like the power in this just comes from just 100% diving into Chucky and just embracing that shit. Do you guys agree with that? Or would you have liked to see it drawn out? Or
I think that if they had leaned more into, is Andy just crazy? Like, I don't think that the franchise could have gone as far as it did.
Yeah, I'd agree with it. When I was watching this, I was blown away, because like I said, I hadn't seen it in forever. And I was just like, man, I love that they didn't go that route and they just fucking leaned into who Chucky is. And I know I was telling all of you, like, I just want to watch the rest of the series now because I've never watched the rest. Like, just the way Chucky was in this. And then I'm like looking through Google images of how he progresses and changes. And I was reading synopses of the others and I was just like, Jesus, this sounds totally up my alley. What happened to me back then that I didn't keep watching these? And where are all my dolls?
I know when I was in school, I did a book report on Child's Play 3 because I had like the novelization, and our teacher was like, "Oh, you can do it on anything you want." So
you're like, "Ha ha!"
Yeah, I was like, "Okay, hey, look, Child's Play 3."
How did that go?
I think it wasn't too long after that. She was like, "You can no longer do books that had been made into movies," but that was more. Somebody did Robin Hood telling the synopsis of the Kevin Costner movie, and she's like, there is no Azim in this book. You didn't read the book, did you? And he was like, okay, no more movie books.
And then they were all singing and dancing, and Dave Chappelle was reaching for his Reebok pumps. Oh, wait, maybe I saw a different one.
The one with an actual British accent.
That's right.
I thought we were going to say the one with the little Disney. There was a fox.
There was a big chicken in this movie.
Yeah.
All right. Here's, Allison and Ian talked about things that stood out to them that were problematic, and you as well, James, which is unbelievable. My problem, aside from some of the other stuff that's been mentioned, and I think I wrote this down and actually said it out loud with my wife when she was watching it with me. I'm like, this kid is riding the L train in Chicago by himself during the day. No one says a word. No one notices. No one finds it suspicious that he's getting on the L by himself, which kids do, but he's the only kid. He's the only kid on the L train through Chicago, and he's going to like a very rundown area. So for me watching this, I'm like, I feel as though somebody would have said something, noticed something, maybe asked the kid, not necessarily got intervened, but had some interaction with the kid, like, "Hey, kid, where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going so-and-so." It was just no one talked to him or interacted with him. And I immediately thought back to what James and I have talked about. I think the Lovecrafts, we've talked about this as well, about the little white girl trope within horror films, where they possibly saw him and like, "Nah, I'm not fucking with that kid." There's something a little off about him because he's on this train by himself. So I was stuck between that, as either people were cautious of him, or when making this film, they just decided not to even cover that.
It was either him or the little doll. You know, maybe you're like, you know what? What's worse than a little white kid in the ghetto? Little white kid with a doll in the ghetto.
That would have been a great scene, like somebody looking over and about to say something, and then Chucky just kind of turns to them, and then they're like, "Yeah, fuck that shit."
He puts his finger up to his lips, like,
"Oh man,
yeah." Who are you going to tell if you saw that? Nobody.
Yeah, you'd have the obligatory '80s moment where the guy looks at whatever he was smoking and then throws it out the window because he realizes it's way too strong for him. Or the bottle of whatever he happened to be drinking.
And it's funny that you say that because they did that. I think it was in Bride of Chucky. Some people were like smoking a joint or something, and they see Chucky in the back of the van, and they like look at it, they're like, "Whoa, this is some strong stuff."
Yeah, they did actually go back to that. Yeah.
The one thing I really like about the scene of stalking down the guy in that house, like this goes into what I was saying about the revenge issue. Like if Chucky was just going out finding these people, I feel like this would be an even stronger film. So like it brings me back to the cop and how he's randomly pulled into this. Like I feel like it's the one missing piece in this film that would make it stronger for me if this was all just Chucky stalking people down.
You mean without Andy going along?
Well, no, even if Andy goes, but like just the whole idea of this cop getting pulled in, like I said earlier, right? Like I feel like this scene shows that Chucky could just go find the people that pissed him off in his life. It's like it was already there and they didn't do it with the cop, and I don't know why.
Yeah, like if the cop had a personal vendetta against Charles Lee Ray or something, or maybe Chucky had something against the cop. Like maybe the cop, I don't know, like had arrested him or like, thwarted him several times and they had like interacted, but it was kind of like this is a cop who was trying to catch him and then he just happened to be there the night that he put his soul in a body and then they just happen to bump it. He just happens to be the cop that comes to the house where he murders the one chick. And then it just seems like it just keeps happening where they keep running into each other instead of there being a reason why it is this cop.
Yeah, he leaves like little notes behind, and hey, you're never gonna save them all. Whatever, detective is Humperdinck.
Well, I guess the weird thing to me is if I saw this guy dying and chanting over a doll, and I saw the lightning hit, like, wouldn't I at least kind of believe that these other people that are like, no, he's inside this doll? I don't know. To me, it seems like you've been presented with a lot of the evidence and you should buy into this.
Yeah, but James, would you?
Me? Yes, absolutely. But that's also why I'm not a cop. So, what do I know?
No, I'm only saying that because there are a lot of things that we all look at in a lot of, especially horror films, right? That all make sense to us or all stand out to us. And we're like, yeah, of course. But if that stuff happened to you in regular life, it'd be a whole lot easier, a whole lot harder for us to believe in. It'd be a whole lot easier for us to dismiss it. Plus, if you haven't been exposed to any of that stuff, I mean, the detective sees all that. He doesn't see the soul go into the body or anything. He just thinks that, I shot and killed Charles Lee Ray. I got him. Of course he's dead. But he does start to believe at least a little bit when he starts interacting with the family a little bit more and hearing about what's going on. And the fact that here was the other thing that got me was the whole not putting Chucky and Charles Lee Ray together quicker when they're like, oh, you know what that killer's nickname was?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that's normally what people named Charles go by if they go by nickname. It'd be weird if he called himself Roberto.
I did want to say, though, I think that this movie does such a good job of making a likable villain. Like Chucky is so likable. Like you just sometimes you're like, yes, kill him. Like you're just so on his side because he's awful. Like he is awful. Like he's 100% a monster, but he's so likable. Like when he's in the elevator and he tells that lady, fuck you. Like you're like, yeah, fuck you, bitch. Like you're just on board with him from the get-go almost. Like from the jump, you're like, yeah, get him. And you're just like, nope, I'm that person.
I have quoted that line more times than I am proud to say, because there's often throughout the day, something will happen. I'm like, fuck you. Just like at anything, inanimate objects, someone in traffic, the grocery store, those weird guys that were yelling at people, on campus. It's just one of those things where you're like, I love using that quote on so many things and it so many times. It's great.
It's perfect. Like I know Ian uses it all the time. It's just such a perfect, it's just, it is, I don't know. It's just perfect. He's such a likable villain. And there's times you're like, is he the villain? Yeah, I guess he's technically the villain, but I don't know. I think that may be the success of the franchise, because especially as it goes on, he's less of a villain, more of just the main character.
Right. And it
all he wanted to do was watch the 10 o'clock news to see what happened about his death and about his buddy escaping custody. And then this lady is going to send a kid who it's his birthday home at 10 o'clock. Home, but send to bed. It wasn't even 10 o'clock. I think it was the 9 o'clock news or something like that. I'm like, and then so maybe if she would have just let them watch the news, maybe this movie would have played out. Maybe Chucky wouldn't have killed anybody. He would have just been content, living with this little boy for the rest of his life.
Well, plus he doesn't even know about transferring his soul into the kid's body until he goes back to Dr. Death, John. When he goes back to John, he's like, oh, yeah, you're becoming human. You have to switch into another person's body. The first person you revealed yourself to. at that point you're like, well, we know what's going to happen. It's like, sorry, Andy.
Now I just want to see like a web skit of what could have been, and it's just Chucky watching the news, and he's like, "Huh, okay, well, you ready for bed?"
Like, and then he's in the morning. It's him and Andy living life.
He's showing him the right way to make breakfast for Mom.
Yeah.
Because if he stayed a doll, guess what? He wouldn't have to pay taxes. He wouldn't have to go to work. He could just literally just hang out all day long. Like I don't see the downside of this.
I think the downside is he doesn't yet know about hot blonde dolls. So he doesn't know that, there's a love life out there. Maybe that was what was holding him back. Maybe if he could have seen the future, he would have been okay.
Well, I mean, Tiffany was always looking for him, so it was eventually going to happen. Here's the other thing, because this has been discussed with, comparing different villains, different horror characters and stuff. And I think that one of the great things about Chucky, and when you compare it to other things like, Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers or Leatherface, right? There are these big imposing figures that, they've got to catch you. Whereas Chucky's big strength is the element of surprise. And not only that, but the fact that this guy really knows how to plan a murder when he needs to plan one. And he's just so good at it. Even when it's something so simple as I'm going to push someone out the window, who's gonna assume that it's a doll that's doing it? I mean, that's why the attention immediately goes to Andy, and he must somehow be disturbed, and he's actually acting out. This would be a great way to get away with crimes. Who on earth is going to suspect a doll? And then if they do suspect a doll, how are you going to be able to convince anybody else that the doll is the one that was doing it?
Exactly. I was going to say also, since, it's like he's not just like a custom doll. Like there's thousands of these different dolls that look just like him. So it's like, even if something were to happen, like he does, I know he does it in where like sometimes he'll stick this other doll there and they're like, oh, come on, Chucky. And then it's not Chucky. So it's like he could have just had like a great life going around pulling heist, robbing and killing people. And then, anytime anybody gets close, he just makes sure he puts another dummy good guy doll there to take the fall for him. And then everyone think this person's crazy and they'd go to the mental hospital.
I mean, that would be a great way to get away with so many things. Maybe because how would you be able to prove it? Because even when it comes down to the mom, when she becomes so frustrated because she doesn't believe it, but then she's kind of like, oh, well, talk to me, damn it, or I'm going to put you in the fire. And then that's when Chucky reveals himself. It's like, oh, yeah, I'll fucking kill you. and I'm in my head, I'm thinking like, Chucky, you should have just not said shit, man. You would have gotten away with this. But here you go. You had to have a temper.
I do like that he has that whole like element of surprise, and he's really good at making it seem kind of like an accident most of the time. Like even in the series, there's one kill that's like brilliant where he loads the dishwasher with just all the knives facing up. And I was like, who loads a dishwasher like that? And then the maid just right down on the knives. Nice little accident there. Oh, she slipped and fell. It's brilliant. I love it.
That's what happens sometimes.
Accident. He's really good at being like, especially in the beginning of like each movie and each thing, like he's really good at just making these kind of seem like an accident so that people aren't on to him. And it's not until later that he's just like, fuck it, I'm just going to kill everybody out in the open. I don't care anymore.
And also going back to the scene that Don brought up about when the mom is about to throw him in the fire, like he went from like 0 to like 1,000,000 in like a second. He just like, he's there not saying anything. And then he just goes off, I'm going to rip your fucking throat out, you fucking bitch. And I was just like, whoa, like you're saying, like if he wouldn't have went into the fire, but like he really like, went from 0 to 100. And then she throws him on the floor. And then like that. And that's one thing about Chucky too, is like, unlike Jason and Michael Myers, like these guys are big. You're going to see them coming. As long as you don't lose sight of them all the way, you can kind of, keep up with where they're at. But it's like with Chucky, because he's small, if you lose him for a second, he's under a couch, he's under a bed. And then next thing you know, he's around behind you, jumping around, stabbing you in the neck or something.
Yeah, because once he gets you off your feet, game over. Something that I thought would have been an interesting turn with this one, right? So Dr. Death has this moment where it's like, oh, you're using all this stuff for evil, and you're perverting, what I taught you. In other movies, or at least these movies where it's clear that someone has been using magic or voodoo for bad, they normally get their comeuppance that way. Like they, in Princess and the Frog, the Dr. Facilier, he gets taken by the demons because he screwed up his bargain with them, so they drag him into the underworld. Where I almost feel like it would have been a cool ending, at least for Chucky, where it's too late for him to convert himself or to get into Andy's body, and because the spell has been interrupted or it takes him too long to do it, that he then gets dragged through or struck by lightning, and whatever dark forces happen to take him away. I think that would have been a cool way to have his misuse come full circle, where he actually gets punished for it, as opposed to which, I mean, throwing him in the fire is great, and then of course shooting him because we don't know what the fuck we're doing with this guy. But I mean, it's still a fun moment that they have where they're trying to deal with this little doll and try and figure out exactly how we can get rid of him.
Yeah, I know in the second one, when he completes the ritual with Andy or whatever, like, he doesn't go into his body because he had been in the doll's body or something like that. And It would have been cool, like you're saying, like if like some spirits or something would have come at that point to try to drag him back to the underworld, because he's trying to get out of this body that he's already trapped in at this point.
But then, we'd be deprived of all the one-liners and the jokes. And I mean, the great franchise of, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and Curse of Chucky, like all those, I guess, the original film series that gets created. Because in all honesty, I mean, it's great the way that they tie all that stuff together within the first, 7 movies that they have?
Yeah, something like that. I know it's crazy. Like, no matter how he dies at the end of a movie, they always find another way to bring him back. Because, like, in this one, he gets, shot and caught on fire. At the end of the second one, he gets literally blown up with, like, an air tank after he has all this melted plastic on him. In the third one, he gets dropped into a giant fan and cut into pieces. And they still don't explain how his doll body is so complete in Bride of Chucky to sew him back for Tiffany to sew him back. And that was like my biggest complaint when I watched Bride of Chucky. I'm like, he went into a fan at the end of the last one, so how is she sewing his pieces back together at this point? Yeah, I understand the stitches on his face, but he literally disintegrated when he went into this fan. But it's like they always, and it's like any horror movie, they do that. They always find some way to bring the bad guy back. Because and they know that's what, like, if you have somebody that's likable enough, that's what people really want. It doesn't matter about the good guys. It's why nobody cares about the camp counselors that keep coming back in all the Friday the 13th movies. It's just about Jason going out and taking them out. Kind of like with Child's Play. It's like they they go away from Andy, because I know they recast him in the third one, but it's like they don't, like, Andy's never brought back again until, like, I think, like, Curse and Cult, they bring him back a little bit. But it's like they're like, they know at that point this is all about Chucky, and then when they introduce Tiffany, they're like, this is all about Chucky and Tiffany. We know who the stars are in this franchise. Right. Everybody just cares about the dolls.
So on that note, what is each of your favorite ones in the series? Oh. I'm gonna sit this one out because I've only watched the first one. But
you've only watched the first one?
Yeah. We went over that a little bit ago.
I'm sorry. Let me go back. No, it didn't sink in. Here, let me go back because I promised I would not be that kind of person. Wait a second. You've only seen the first one, James? You are missing out, man. You're really going to enjoy the second, the third, all the way through the seventh.
For once, I'm actually looking forward to it. Usually I'm like, yeah, I'm good. But no, this one, I want to see it get weirder. So, I'm telling which ones... Yeah,
dude, I'm telling you from experience. When you have the time to watch them, and this is for anybody who hasn't seen the other 6, not including the reboot, but the other 6 in the original series, They are fun. They go from, dark to comedy to dark comedy to horror comedy. And then the last couple of ones, Curse and Cult, they get a little bit darker, but they're all good. And they all, at least for me, they fit well together. I mean, you have some inconsistencies, obviously, but they all fit well together to tell this story. So yeah, I am jealous of you with the ability to see these for the first time. There,
I'm gonna live tweet them. It'll be great.
Oh, please.
So what's the answer? What's your favorites in the series?
I'm gonna let the Lovecrafts go.
I like probably part 2 because Chucky gets really crazy in that one and has some pretty imaginative kills. And this is before they try to go all make it super comedic like the like Bride and Chucky and the rest of them. But like I really like part 2. He does some pretty crazy stuff in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Mine was Child's Play 3. It came out right when I was like to the age where like I'd seen the other ones as like a younger kid, but it was where I was actually really like at an age where I could relate to characters and starting to actually like understand movies more. And it's where, he's Andy's at the military academy and like just that whole setting and everything was like.
All right.
And Don?
For me, it is it's, what, I'm just going to go with the first one. I like 1 through 4 the most because I like the goofiness of Bride of Chucky, especially the whole, do you have a rubber? Just the jokes in this film and even the kills are hilarious. But I'm going to go with the first one because this is where we get to see Chucky get created. You get enough understanding of who and what Chucky is to where you can really start appreciating where it goes.
All right. One last question for each of you. And you can feel free to argue this out if you want. Who wins in a fight, Chucky or Annabelle?
I feel like I've had this question before.
I know, but I'm interested in new takes on it.
I'm going to go with Chucky because Annabelle just sits there and there's a ghost spirit that manipulates that doll. So Chucky could just and no matter what happens to the Chucky doll, he just keeps coming back.
That's fair. Allison, do you have any input on this?
Oh, I want to say Chucky, but I feel like it would be Annabelle because it is a ghost spirit. Like, how is he going to kill it? He has no idea. Like, the ghost spirit could take out doll after doll after doll. And I know, like, Chucky can, it's supposed to be the same doll every movie, right? Like, he's supposed to be the same body. It gets put back together. It gets reformed. It gets melted down and made into another one. Like, it's supposed to be his spirit's trapped in like that plastic. Whereas Annabelle, that spirit can go into any doll should it want to. It doesn't have to be a nurse invites it in. Like, it's a spirit that can move around. Whereas Charles Lee Ray is supposed to be a spirit that's trapped in that plastic now.
I would just like to apologize if 12 days from now, you guys are walking through your house and you're like, yeah, but Annabelle could, So don't fight over it. Let it go. No. All right. Does anybody have anything left they want to say about this film before we wrap this up?
I'm spent.
Fuck you.
Wait, actually, I got one last thing. Okay, the initial attempt to kill Chucky bothers me, because Andy's sitting there struggling to, I guess, muster up the strength to light the gas, right? So the mom has Chucky trapped at the fireplace. Gas is on, which is weird because in the previous, flop house that they go to, the gas wouldn't have been on to cause that house to explode. But the gas is on in their house. They're turning it on. She's holding him back, and Andy, delivers that one line where it says, this is the end friend. Okay, Chucky gets set on fire, and then the mom just immediately, she has like a log or something up against the fireplace guard, And she's just kind of like, oh, well, I'm just going to step back from this thing and let this little doll that's on fire completely fuck up my living room. Completely fuck up my living room. And yeah, as you know, when they take their eyes off of it because they think that he's dead, you know, they turn around and really up and going again. But yeah, I had a big problem with that because my first thought was, you're really going to let this little thing screw up your living room, burn up the carpet. I don't know if you're renting or you own this place, but you're going to have to replace that carpet. And if you have to pay your deposit, or at least if there was a deposit, you're not getting that. There's a killer doll that said that.
And you know, she's tight on money. She couldn't afford the doll. Yeah. She's a single mother with a single income.
She really took a gamble on that, by the way. Like if she came home with a knockoff doll, he would have known. And,
be like she'd
be off the money and have him ready to kill her.
It would be like in Jingle All the Way when Arnold Schwarzenegger buys the one that speaks in Spanish. Imagine like if Chucky would have got home, his name was like Juan, and it was just like Andy doesn't know Spanish.
Me llamo Juan. Yo soy su amigo. Ha ha ha. But it's spelled Jajaja. See, my Spanish speakers will get that one. That was
the first friends with your wife, so I get it.
No, that was look. The first time she did that, I was like, "What the hell is Jajaja?" She's like, "It's ha ha ha." I was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "How do you laugh?" I was like, HAHAHA, and she basically said that would be because there is no H.
There you go. Now we've all learned something together. Yay.
Now, if people like Child's Play, what are some other movies you would recommend to them?
Child's Play 2.
And obviously,
I'm going to go with Child's Play 3.
3, yeah.
Bride of Chucky. No, seriously, though, I would do, I know a movie that I watched that was really, really creepy back in the day was like, I think it's just called Dolls. It's gory.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the cover always freaked me out when I would see it in the movie store. Like that movie I would definitely recommend for this. And then also like any of the, I don't know, first 5 or 6 Puppet Master movies. After that, you know, they get really stupid, but at least the first couple are nice.
All right, Allison, what about you?
There's some obvious comparisons you could do if you want to watch another like doll movie. There's Annabelle, Dead Silence, The Boy, which even though that wasn't technically the doll, but there was a movie I watched like 20 something years ago. It was really, really weird. It's called Blood Dolls. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a weird one. But yeah, I mean, I know there's other like doll movies other than like, there's like Doll Graveyard and Finders Keepers and things like that. But like your big ones are going to be like Annabelle, Dead Silence.
Yeah, obviously. Dead Silence is the one I was going to go with. I know we did it last week on this show, but I would love to watch these two together just because they're so like they're similar, but so different at the same time. It's just like a fun way to show the other sides of it, you know? All right, Don, 387 recommendations. Let's go.
Actually, I have 317. So
damn it.
I mean, we've already mentioned these, but Annabelle, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Halloween, and then the more recent ones, the 2018. As much as I hate this movie and as much as I'm going to get hate for saying I don't like this movie, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Let's see, Misery, Hellraiser, The Lost Boys, Candyman, Return of the Living Dead, House, Reanimator, Creepshow, The Fly, The Good Son, Dead Silence, Children of the Corn, Critters, Ghoulies, Beetlejuice, Gremlins, Terrifier, Trick or Treat, and
are you just reading a list of movies you saw this year?
No. I saw all these yesterday, and the Terminator.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind the Terminator, especially if you somewhat enjoyed the remake of or reboot, whatever it was, of the Child's Play movie.
Oh yeah.
Is the remake pretty good?
It's different. I like there's parts about it I really, really liked, and then there was other parts that weren't as good. I wish instead of calling it Child's Play, they would have just said gave it another name like Friends Till the End or something like that, and just put that it's based on Child's Play. But there's a couple scenes in it that were really cool, like because it is like an AI that ends up going bad, like no longer in safe mode. The kids are watching, I think it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and they're just laughing. The Andy and a couple of his buddies, they're watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and they're just laughing their asses off at Leatherface Chop Top killing people. And Chucky, or his name is Buddy in the new one, he's just watching it, right? And he's just like saying, oh, these children like murder. So he comes into the living room with like a knife, like he's about to stab them, laughing maniacally because it's Mark Hamill doing the voice. And they're all like, no, stop, what are you doing? And he's like, I thought you would like this. Like, you literally like when they're doing it, when they're killing people on TV. So I like that aspect of it. There is a couple scenes that were like really, really good like that in the remake.
So that sounds fascinating to me. When I watched the trailer, I was like, this looks really cool. And then I thought about just being a douche and only watching that version and never talking about the others.
You'll like the kills in this one too.
The kills are really good in the reboot or whatever. I thought those were pretty well crafted.
Well, we said we'd be friends till the end, and this is the end. So,
friend.
Sure. Now, I want to thank you guys for coming back again. We always
Most
love
definitely.
having you guys. And you guys, like, seriously, you've supported us from the very beginning, and we completely appreciate it. And we love having you. So come back anytime.
110%.
Thanks.
All right. So I suppose that wraps it up for this week. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And we'll see you next week here at thenecronoma.com.